Hello everybody. On part one of this win series, we went over the win values or win rows. A lot of you guys emailed me for a copy, so if you still want a copy of the win rows, feel free to email me below. This is what it looks like. So in this video, we're going to be going into some more practical applications and a win strategy that's going to help you maximize your probability of hitting the target during a match. So stay tuned. Before we jump into this video, I wanted to give you guys a review of the previous video, part one. We talked about the win rows and win values. And usually I like to leave my Kestrel at full value, either at 9 o'clock or at 3 o'clock, depending where the wind's coming from. And I talk about my reasons for doing that in the first video. But if the wind is coming from 10 miles an hour at full value, that would be, I would just input 10 miles an hour. If the wind is coming from 10 miles an hour at 10:30 per se, then I'm just going to input 70% of that, and that would be 7 miles an hour. And if the wind is coming from 25 miles an hour, then not 25 miles per hour, 10 miles an hour at 11:30, then I would just input 25% of that, or round that down to 2. And then if the wind's coming from the right, then I'm just gonna put my wind at 3 o'clock. And if the wind's coming from 2 o'clock, let's say, that's gonna be an 87% value. And if it's at 10 miles an hour coming from 2 o'clock, then 87% of 10 miles an hour is about 9% or 9 miles an hour. But before we jump into some practical applications, I wanted to show you guys how I get my min, average, and max on the Kestrel. So when I'm getting my min, max, and average for win, what I usually do is, when you're on the screen, you click the top right button twice, and you'll see all these little data. Go scroll up and down until you get to wind speed. So there's crosswind, headwind, but you want wind speed. And then scroll right or left until you get to min, max, and average. And then open your impeller. And then I'll be facing the wind. Face the wind and then press start. And then do this for about maybe 10 to 30 seconds. The longer the better, probably. And then it's going to give you your min, max, and average. And then just make sure that you're facing the wind when you're doing it. So my min is 1.5, which I'll round down to 1. Average is 2.7, which is going to be 3. Max is 4.8. I round that up to 5. So I like to round down my min and round up my max, just so I get the full wind covered. So make sure that you write down your min, average, and max that you got from your Kestrel. And let's say the wind was coming from 10:30 in relation to your target. We know from the previous video, if you have your wind rows memorized, or if you look at your wind rows, that 10:30 is a 70% value. So if I'm going to convert this to full value, then this is going to be 1 times 70% is 0.7. So I'm just going to round that up to 1. And then this is going to be at 2.0. And then this max is going to be converted to 3.5, or I'm going to round that up to 4. So in my Kestrel, I'm going to leave it at 9 o'clock since we converted it to full value. My min is going to be at 1, and then my max or average is 2, and then my max is going to be at 4. So after converting it to full value, This is the actual wind at 10:30, and this is when you convert it full value. It's 1, 2, and 4. And let's pretend your target is 150 yards. So I'm gonna go on my Kestrel and put my target to 150 yards. And then my min is 1, my max is 4. And since we're at full value converted, then I'm gonna leave it at 9 o'clock since the wind was coming from the left at 10:30. So as you can see, my solution for my min is, I'm gonna round down again for my min. So it's gonna be 0.2. My max is gonna be 0.7, rounded up. And then my average is gonna be 0.4 mils. So this is how I write my dope card. I might go into a different video to show you guys how to do it. But I have my KYL target 150. My elevation is gonna be the top right. And this is gonna be my wind columns, 1 mile an hour, 2 mile an hour, 4 mile an hour left. Since it's coming from the left, then you're gonna hold left. And in mils, that's 0.2, 0.4, and 0.7. This is gonna be my possible wind, values. So the question that we're trying to answer right now is, can I fit those wind calls on my plate? Can I fit 0.2 to 0.7 on this first plate? Let's say this is a KYL target. This KYL target is about a full mil wide. So the answer to the question is yes, I can fit 0.2 to 0.7 on here. And if you're able to fit your wind calls on your target, if it's wide enough, then you're gonna increase your probability of hitting the target. Unless you're just very unstable for some reason, you should be able to hit the target with those wind calls. All right, what if you go to the next target and it's smaller? That's why it's important for you to watch your impact on this big target so that you know what to do on that next target. Let's say you impacted right here. That's about 0.3 left. It's very important before moving on that you follow through and take a look at your scope after you pull the trigger and see where you impacted on the plate. And sometimes the plate may be very blurry because there's so much impacts on it. Maybe one of the ways that you could tell is by just taking a mental picture of what the plate looked like before you shot it and afterwards, and maybe you could see a difference, and then you'll be able to tell that your bullet was impacted right there, or maybe the plate swung left a little bit. Sometimes it does that if the plate is big enough. But it's very important in this first target, before moving on, that you try your best to see where you impacted, so that on the next target you can put that 0.3 in the middle, and you should be able to hit in the middle on that next target unless the wind drastically change. Again, our wind calls are 0.2 to 0.7. Are you able to fit that on the first target? Yes. Send the bullet, watch where you impact, and call out loud your next wind call. In this instance, it was 0.3. So on the next target, I'm gonna say 0.3 left. Then I'm gonna put that in the center, and then so on until you get to the small KYL. Okay, now let's go into a different scenario, but the same target, same distance, same wind calls. Your min is 0.2 to 0.7, 0.4 is your average, but this time the target is only 0.4 wide. So you obviously can't fit your wind calls on here. So for sure, wind calls is from 0.2 to 0.7. It's about 5 mils, and you can only fit 0.4 of wind. So this is what I like to call process of elimination. You have a plan A, and if plan A doesn't work, then plan B should work. Do from 0.2 to 0.6. If you bracket that 0.2 to 0.6 and that doesn't work, then you should move over into the next bracket, which I would do 0.5 to 0.9. A lot of shooters like to call that correcting the full width of the plate. So you're making a bold correction. I would correct 90% of the target. So If you miss from 0.2 to 0.6, then I would correct 90% of that and do from 0.5 to 0.9. And you should hit your target after your first miss, because your possible wind calls are from 0.2 to 0.7, unless the wind drastically change, which can happen. Then if you can see that it increased and your mirage is still going left to right, then you could increase and make another bold correction 90% of the plate and see if it impacts. You should impact within after 2 or 3 rounds, hopefully, unless the wind does something different. Now let's go to another scenario. What if your min is 5, average is 10, and max is 15, and the wind's coming from 230 in relation to the target, and it's at 175 yards. Well, we know that 230 is pretty much full value. 230 is 97%, and 97% is pretty much close to full value. So we're just gonna leave this at full value. So 5, 10, 15 on my Kestrel. I'm gonna put 175. I forgot to put my wind at 3 o'clock because the wind was coming from 230 in this example. I should have put it at 3 o'clock. I still have it at 9 o'clock, so just bear with me on that one. 5, and then start with 5 and 10, and my wind call for my min is 0.9. Then my average would be 1.7. Then I'm going to input my max, which is 15 miles an hour, and it's going to be 2.4. And now the question is, can I fit this wind call on my plate? Let's take a look at the plate. So here's the target, 175 big square right here. Since the wind's coming from the right, then we're going to hold right. This plate is about, I would say, roughly 0.7, 0.8, let's say 0.8 wide. And the question of the hour is, can I fit these wind calls on my plate? Well, let's see. So we're going from 0.9, which is right here, from 0.9 to 1.7. I can only fit the first 2 wind calls. So what I'm gonna do is process of elimination again. I'm gonna send the first round, and if it doesn't impact, then I'm gonna correct 90% of the plate. So I'm gonna correct from 1.6 to 2.4. Then I'm gonna send another round, and if that doesn't impact, then I'm gonna do another bold correction. So this time from 2.2, and you should impact by the 2nd or 3rd round. And believe it or not, there's one time here in Texas that we faced similar winds to this. We were holding from 1 full mil to 2 full mils, probably even more. So this could happen. This is not just a made-up scenario. Anyways, the big takeaway is, do your best to spot where you impacted or where you missed. And even if you can't spot where you missed, if it's a skyline target, then if you missed, you know something that you missed. Let's say you're from 0.9 to 1.4 wind holding right. If you miss on these wind holds, don't set another round in the same wind hold. Change something, make a bold correction, so that the next round you may impact. And if that doesn't impact, make another bold correction, and you should impact by the 3rd round. That's the big takeaway, is make bold corrections and try to spot your impacts or misses. All this math stuff is really cool, and the wind rose is very helpful, but at the end of the day, this tool right here is just a tool. It's just a starting point. A lot of times during the stage, I may end up ditching my plan because the wind may have switched to the opposite direction, and you just do your best and spot your impacts and send it. The bullet will not lie to you. You can have all these columns and wind row stuff, which is very important. I think we could use it to our advantage, but the wind is a very dynamic animal, and it can switch on you unless you have a very consistent wind the whole day. But if at the end of the day, do your best to spot your impacts and misses and readjust based on that, because sometimes you may have to ditch your plan and just go with what the bullet tells you downrange. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. For part 3, I think I might go into some more wind strategies and some troop line stuff, so stay tuned.